All right, welcome to Atheism versus Logic, and my name is Jeremy Spry. And today I want to talk about motivation. So, with natural selection and with life, with living organisms, there is a motivation. These organisms try to stay alive. So, the question I have, because I'm not talking about that. I'm actually talking from non-life to life, chemicals becoming a living cell. What motivation do chemicals have to become a living cell? If you know, chemicals are still chemicals, even when they're not life. When they're life, they're chemicals. When they're non-life, they're chemicals. So my question is, what motivation do chemicals have to become life? Now, I think that the thought that non-life became life is illogical. Without a creator, that abiogenesis without a creator is crazy. And I've been teaching through the mechanisms inside of a living cell, the most basic cell and form of life that we have currently, which is a prokaryotic cell. And man, it's just crazy, the amazing mechanisms. I hope you've been watching the links that I've been posting in the descriptions, that these visuals that we now have, that scientists have discovered what's happening inside of a cell, and then people are creating these great computer generated videos on what is happening inside of a cell. Go to my video yesterday that was DNA versus construction about RNA, and then look at the description and click on that link that showed protein synthesis. It's amazing. So then ask yourself that. What is the motivation for chemicals to become life? And then look at my video, Atheism versus Math, or Math Kills Atheism, where it's just improbable to think that amino acids could put themselves in the very specific sequence, long sequence, to create an enzyme which is necessary for life. And there's just not enough time in 14 point something billion years for that to happen randomly, for that code to get cracked. So ask yourself that. I don't think there's any motivation for chemicals to become life. If anything, chemicals try to go into their easiest state. They typically want to become less complex than more complex. I know they've shown, RNA forming on its own, but still that's not life. I think that RNA would have no motivation to go to the next step. And even if it accidentally found itself inside of a lipid membrane, well, that's very far from the bilipid membrane that we see in modern cells. So. And then, of course, you don't have ribosomes. You don't have a cytoplasm. You don't have, RNA. What kind of sequence is it in? It has to be in a very specific sequence. And so I don't think chemicals have motivation to become life. So the question is, if you've got this amazing living cell, and I'm asking you to study the prokaryotic cell and the mechanisms that happen inside of it. If you can be an atheist after understanding what happens inside of a prokaryotic cell, man, I am impressed by your faith. You have an amazing faith in what time and natural processes can produce, and I disagree with you. And so my question might be, what is your motivation? What is your motivation to look at the amazing mechanisms inside of a prokaryotic cell and say that was not created? Like I said yesterday, I'm not saying you have to adopt a certain religion. So why are you what I would call anti-science? Why are you adopting anti-science and saying that there's no creator behind life? I think it's very obvious that we have specific mechanisms that could only come about by a mind, and chemicals don't have the motivation to become those specific mechanisms because they're happy. They're chemicals. They're not going to become less chemicals. They're not going to die off because they're not becoming life. Life has motivation to stay alive, but chemicals, they're chemicals no matter what happens. So ask yourself those questions. What's the motivation for chemicals to become life? I'd say there's none. And they've got so many leaps and bounds to become life. And, I have found out talking to atheists that they don't understand how a prokaryotic cell functions. So really research that and ask yourself, what's your motivation for not believing in a God when I believe the evidence is overwhelming that we were created? And you could be a deist where the creator doesn't even care. It created us and left us. But then I would ask you to read the New Testament, read the words of Jesus, and see, could this be our creator?